your children are.
Yes. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome, Spraylock Nation, to another glorious day here, overcast day here in Chattanooga at the timing of this video. Studio 71, I think?
Yes, 71 all day long.
Unless he's changed it again. So we're going to bring out a Concrete Digest episode. Why? Just because.
So we're talking about fiber today.
Yes.
Okay. So why do we use fibers in concrete?
To make your concrete hairy?
That's usually not the goal, and it's usually not the goal to make it more digestible.
No, but the hairy comment was from the 90s and the carpet fibers that
Yeah.
you'd see them burning off the slabs, but yeah.
Yeah, so when did we start using fibers in concrete as an industry, Joshua?
Well, I'm not as old as you look, so only in the 90s would I started. But doing some research, it was done early in the early 1900s. Which if you want to feel old, realize that when we're talking the 1990s, that was the late 1900s.
Yeah. Thanks, man. I needed that.
So, but early on in the 1900s, they were using horsehair in mud bricks.
Okay.
They started with asbestos in somewhere along that way, and then sometime around the 1950s, realizing that we could do better than asbestos we got into some composite materials, some synthetics. 1960s, we got into steel, polyfibers, and other things.
Okay. Starting to really gain some wider and wider acceptance in the 90s, if I remember correctly, the late 1900s.
Yeah, the late 1900s, fiber started becoming more readily used in concrete, and for many different reasons.
Yep. One of the reasons that I've seen fiber being used with at least the micro polysynthetic stuff, the polypropylenes and some of those, is plastic shrinkage crack reduction during the plastic.
Pause. I got to pause you. I'm sorry. If we're talking about fibers,
Yes.
and we got into steel and poly, and you started with micro.
Yeah.
If you're going to throw micro around, could you at least let the audience know when you say micro versus macro fibers?
Yeah.
What are we looking at? Because some of these people probably have no clue.
Oh.
I mean, they're in their mind thinking, horsehair and carpet fibers going in concrete.
Sure.
And we're talking about something different. So I'm going to unpause you now,
Okay.
if you don't mind, and just go into a little bit more about the micro, macro, poly thing
yeah.
versus jumping right in.
Yeah. Thanks for that check. So you have different kinds of fibers.
Yes.
There are the synthetic fibers that are made from various materials like polypropylene, nylon, etc. They come in two main flavors. Macro synthetic fibers, which are going to be large, and then micro synthetic fibers, which are going to be smaller.
But when we talk about macro,
Yes.
again, it's all relative to what we're seeing. So when you say macro, what size are we talking about versus micros?
Yeah, really 2 inch and up, I think, in length.
Okay.
And there's a lot of terminology when you get into fibers that talk about things like aspect ratio, which is going to be a ratio between the length and diameter, or diameter length. I can't remember which way they express it.
Right.
But all of those things factor into the performance of the fiber and how it behaves. And even if the fiber is fibrillated or it's connected and you can stretch it out kind of like a spider web, or if the fiber is sort of a corrugated shape in some of the polymacro blends, or some of those have got actual deformations to help the fiber bond to the concrete. So there's a lot of different flavors and varieties, but in general, the synthetics are on the macro side or the micro side, and the micros are 1.5 inches and down typically in length, and ranging all the way down to some of the cellulose fibers are really, really small.
But either way, in the 90s we talked about it burning off, but nowadays you're not seeing any steel or the synthetics sticking up out of the concrete. The industry's gotten a lot better about that, so you don't even see it in there.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that the fiber guys really have gotten good at is making sure that those fibers are mixing into the concrete well, and they're not, floating or segregating or those kind of things. So the fiber industry in concrete, globally, has really matured, and they've really figured out how to make their product user friendly.
So you first started out with going into shrinkage, and,
Yes.
and crack reduction would come into that. But what other things are we looking at when we get to use fibers? I mean, are we talking about concrete strength from a compressive and flexural?
So sometimes you do get a little bump in your compressive strength just simply because one of the things that the fibers are doing is they're interrupting bleed water channel formation to a degree. So you're hanging on a little more water than you normally would. So if you compare against something that doesn't have fiber in it and you're not curing either concrete well, then your fiber's going to win out.
Well, everybody follows ACI 308, so everybody's
Of
curing their
course,
concrete
yes, of
perfectly.
course.
So let's just be honest, they're doing the initial, intermediate, and final curing.
Of course, yes. You know, we do live in a Pollyanna world where everything everything works just as it's written down in the specification.
Well, of course.
Yeah. So really, the real strength of fibers comes from the ability to impart some flexural, not just flexural strength, but also flexural toughness, which means that when you go to have a concrete that's in tension or in flexure, it's going to provide some strength that concrete doesn't normally naturally have.
Right.
So concrete's great in compression, but you go to bend it, it
Well, yeah.
doesn't really perform well. So the fibers are able to give it a little bit of that ductility, is a word that's thrown around quite a bit. It gives some ability of that concrete to flex and move without complete total failure, like similar to what a rebar would do, but the
Right.
design parameters are quite a bit different.
And you brought up rebar, so I do know in certain cases you're able to get rid of some of your reinforcing steel with the introduction of fibers, whether they're steel or poly or whatever.
Right.
So you can do some of that. The other things you can do is impact and abrasion resistance.
Yes, sir. Especially with the higher volumes of fibers and some of those steel fibers and poly microfiber mixes where you're talking about 1-2% by volume, 1 to 2% by volume or greater, kind of mixes. You're talking about being able to, replace some temperature and shrinkage steel possibly. You're talking about greater, much greater impact resistance. In fact, as you probably know, I've played around a little bit with blast and impact resistance in the past. With
You say that,
concrete.
but really you just wanted to shoot something.
Exactly.
And that's really what it is. Give me that. I played with impact resistance concrete. No, you just wanted to shoot a high caliber weapon into concrete.
Yeah, you don't get to.
Welcome to the South.
In the concrete, yeah, absolutely. In the concrete world, you don't often get to fire a 50 cal at concrete.
But you did it under supervised conditions
Absolutely.
at a place of
Law enforcement was even involved,
Yes.
but we had a good time those days that we did that.
safety first.
Absolutely. So don't just go shooting concrete with a 50 cal if you don't know what you're doing. So you get some of those great benefits from using fibers in concrete, but the dosage rate, the type of fiber is many and varied. So you'll want to do your research. You'll want to see what are you trying to accomplish and what kind of fiber load can get you there. There's plenty of research as well as technical documents produced by the fiber companies that will help guide you through all of those considerations. And the fiber companies have great sales folks and engineers that are going to be able to have a conversation with you and walk you through all that.
One last question,
What's that?
because we're going to get asked.
Yeah.
We introduced the Amorpha, so the integral mix,
Yes.
and then we have the spray applied.
Yes.
I already know the answer, but our audience doesn't.
Yeah.
Does this fiber change us being able to treat the concrete?
No. In fact, it's they work very well together. They work in conjunction to provide the concrete with better durability. The ability to hold on to some of that evaporable water is just greatly improved, and together they make a great team. Our products and the fibers, no matter what kind of fiber you're using, whether it's steel, poly, macros, or the microsynthetics, whatever it is.
Like, subscribe. If you got any questions, hit us up on LinkedIn or YouTube. We appreciate it.
Thank you.